Welcome to Twisted Liquid RC Boats. This episode of Twisted Liquid RC Boats is proudly brought to you by Slycat Racing. For all your RC boat needs, slycatracing.com. Good day, everyone, and welcome back to Twisted Liquid RC Boats and the continuation in our Zippkits A-Box Crackerbox build. Today on the channel, guys, we're going to get our keel epoxied into our frame, and as of now, if you didn't join us for the last episode, which I hope you did, you know that we already have our engine rails, stuffing tube support, and our grab rail all epoxied in between bulkheads 3, 4, and 5. Guys, if you notice, I've left a piece of wood that's helping to keep the transom flat and square on the back attached to the boat while I've been epoxying everything into the frame. I figure it was best to do this because if we start from the rear and work our way forward, we're going to be able to keep everything true to our jig and at a perfect 90-degree right angle. Now, after I released the clamps on everything, I went around with the square guys and I checked the boat on all the bulkheads. I checked it on the engine rails and the transom, and we've got everything on this boat built so far square to this jig, which makes me happy. So today, guys, we're going to conquer getting our keel in place. As you notice, before we mix up any epoxy, I've got a clamp dry fit done, as I say. I've got a way figured out that I'm going to clamp this when I get the epoxy into my slots shortly, and I know how I'm going to hold it to the frame in bulkheads 1, 2, and 3 to keep everything exactly the way I want it while it's curing. Also, guys, if you notice, I've got the top deck supports laid in place on both sides, and I've merely got them held in place with binder clamps on the bulkheads. The reason I got them put there is it's helping to keep everything square between these 3 bulkheads. And the squarer we can keep everything as we're epoxying the keel in, the better. Once we get the keel good and cured and epoxied in, we'll put in our keel braces, which we have to do. I've got some elastic bands once we got them into the jig to use on them, and then we'll start to get our chines done. But today, we're going to concentrate on the keel. So, let's get some epoxy mixed up, and let's start to do the keel in the frame of our boat. Okay, guys, we're in the process here of mixing up a small batch of Bob Smith Industries 30-minute slow cure epoxy. We don't need a lot for this little job because we're only doing the slots in the 3 bulkheads and along this leading edge right here on the keel where it meets bulkhead number 1. So you don't need to mix up a lot of epoxy for this one step. Once we get this mixed here now for about a minute or so, so we know that the hardener and the resin is definitely mixed well together, we're going to spread it into the slots, we're going to lay the piece in place, and we're going to clamp it like I showed you in the introduction, and we're going to let it cure. So this will be another step that we got done with our frame. And we are slowly getting some of the work done that we need to get done with this boat, which is great. Like I told you guys in the past few episodes, we're going to try and keep a very constant work pace for you guys, so there's always something for you to see on the channel coming up now lately, in the next little while. And today is a good day to get some more work done. Now this epoxy is getting very well mixed here, so I'd say it's time to get a brush, take our time, and do a little more epoxy work. We'll get a brush going, we'll get some epoxy in these slots, and we won't be very long clamping and holding this keel in place. Now guys, while I was doing my dry fit, I put a couple tiny little pencil marks on bulkhead number 1 to help me make sure that I have it centered when I clamp it. And I suggest you do a little thing like that just to make sure that you know exactly you're putting the part back into place where you had it clamped and held to in your dry fit. It's in a place where you'll never see it on the boat once the boat is built. It's just a couple tiny little pencil marks, that's all. Now I'm going to take the brush and I'm going to slowly add a bead. My brush just came apart. That's okay. I can manage. I can manage. We can manage. And I'm just going to slowly lay a bead down this edge right here on this bulkhead, because our keel is going to butt up against this. Once we got the slots in our bulkheads done, we'll do the slots on the keel also. Make sure there's a good coat of epoxy inside of them. This is fun now with a really short brush, guys. The handle cracked right off on it. But that's it. We're not going to stop working because of that. It's only a minor thing. Brush some good epoxy right there, right on the keel where it joins to the bulkhead, like I say. We'll come back, we'll get in this slot also. Make sure we got a good coating in there. Once again, guys, all the laser burns removed off all the parts to help with the adhesion, promote the adhesion as best we can. So, these are the little things that you have to do. Now guys, we're ready to lay this in place. It's not going to take no great force or anything. Just slide it down over the 3 bulkheads so it goes right in place. Push down on it so you know it's all the way down in the slots. Get a little bit of epoxy that's just right there out of our way. Now we can start to clamp it, and then we can just do some quick fillets around it so we know that it's good afterwards. But right now we're just getting it into place, in the slots, epoxied in the way we like it. So let's grab our clamps. Get them in place. We can start to clamp this together. That one's stuck to my thumb. Got a little bit of epoxy on it. That's fine. I find these little aluminum clamps are great, guys, for keeping everything nice and square as you're building. It's just a simple little trick, but it works great. I'm going to come back right here, clamp this so I know that it's in the exact position I want it. And hold it like that, like so, while I got a chance. Come in with just a tiny fillet in these areas right here. Now this is where the tiny little brush comes in handy, so maybe it cracked out for a reason, guys. Maybe the handle cracked for a reason. But we'll get some epoxy brushed in that right there. So as it sets up and hardens, it's good. Take your time. You got a little bit of working time. It's only a few joints that we're doing in this procedure. And once this cures, we'll come back in, we'll get our keel braces put in place. And we'll have the keel in the frame of our boat. So having it clamped up to there, I'm going to come forward. I'm going to keep pushing down on it right here so I know it's definitely in place. Take some of my aluminum brackets that I got. Get them on the keel. Like I say, guys, if they do stick, they pop off so easily because of their smooth surface. It's nothing to worry about. It's kind of a little trick I figured out. And it really, really helps for keeping everything nice and square. It's simple, it's easy. I know some of you might have thought that they were going to epoxy themselves to the boat when we done the first work with the frame, but they don't. And I find they help to keep everything really nice and true and in place the way you like it. So now, guys, to finish this off, I'm just going to make sure I'm exactly in the middle of my pencil marks like I want to be with the keel. I'm going to come in and I'm going to put a clamp here just to bring it together with bulkhead 1 where we epoxied it to. It'll only bring it together really well. The marks are exactly where I want them. You don't need a lot of tension on your clamps. Stop knocking things over, but you'll know when you're on your marks. And then clamp it. And just for a little added security before our epoxy hardens up completely, I can get a fillet along that front edge right there if I take my time. And that's only going to help increase the strength on this joint right here. And we can do the same on the opposite side. And that's the keel sitting in place in our frame, guys. That didn't take very long to get done. It was a relatively quick procedure, but it was quick because I planned it out. I knew how I was going to clamp it. When I done my dry fit, I knew how I wanted everything to be. And I can't stress enough taking the time to dry fit your parts before you epoxy it together. If you know how you're going to clamp it, how you're going to hold it, and how you can keep it perfectly square to your jig, you can build yourself a good boat. So guys, we're going to give this a little bit of time to cure. We'll get the 2 keel braces in with some elastic bands once this does cure up between them, and that'll support the keel on the front from bulkhead 1 forward. And once we got that done to end this episode, guys, we're going to be into doing some chine work. Okay, guys, we let our keel cure in the frame of our boat overnight so that the epoxy had a lot of time to harden really good. Release the clamps, everything is good. The next step we got to do to end this episode is we've got to install these 2 keel braces right here in 2 slots in the jig. Guys, I took the time just to remove the laser burn off the bottom, not around the top edges. It's only to help the penetration of the epoxy and make it bond good with the jig. So, in order to put these in, I'm going to do it no differently than what I've done with bulkheads. I'm merely going to lay them in the slot. I'm going to lay them up against my square. And once I spread my clamp a little bit, I'm going to clamp it to my square. I'm going to tack it with some CA glue. And then after it's tacked in at a 90-degree angle to the jig, I'm going to epoxy the two of them in. So we'll get this little step out of the way because it's the next thing we got to take care of. Now, no differently than when you're putting a bulkhead into the jig, guys, push down on the keel brace, make sure it's all the way into the slot. If you got it held against your square and you're happy with the fitment of everything, just take some CA glue and tack it on the corners to hold it. Keep a little pressure on it down while you're doing it, so you know it's in the slot. Once you got a tack of CA on it, you can hit it with accelerator just to speed the process up a little. We'll give it about 10 seconds like it says for the instructions for using the product. Once we release our clamp and release our square, we'll say that keel brace is tacked in place, no problem. We'll come over to the other side and do the exact same procedure. You probably don't need to be this fussy, but we've kept everything at a perfect 90-degree angle to the jig so far. So why not do it with these braces as we're installing them? Same thing as before, guys. Push down on it. Make sure it's all the way into the slot. Make sure it's up against your square. Tack a corner with CA glue. Check the other corner. Hit it with accelerator just to speed the process up. You can hold it for another 8 to 10 seconds like they say. Pushing down, keeping everything at a perfect 90-degree angle with our jig as we're building. And once you release the clamp and release the square, that's the second keel brace in place. Now guys, that's a simple little step. We're going to put some elastic bands underneath the keel between these two keel braces. But right now, I'm going to mix up a very small batch of epoxy, and I am going to epoxy around these two keel braces so they're into the jig exactly like the bulkheads are. And then we're going to move on to our next step in the next episode, and we're going to install ourselves some upper chines. We're getting ready and we're getting our laser burn removed. So guys, as I say to you every day and every episode that you watch, thanks for watching Twisted Liquid RC Boats. I truly appreciate it. We're going to keep this steady pace of working on this boat for you like I've told you. We're ready to get a lot of work done, and we're constantly moving ahead with our steps. So, we'll catch you in the next episode. I want you to have a good day and take care of yourself. Thanks for watching, everyone. Feel free to like and subscribe. Take care and stay safe.